too personal. Let's move on.
Let's move on to. Something that you asked me if I could translate it into English. I found an interesting article in the Journal of Contextual Behavioural Science. It's one I read regularly.
I can't even read the title, let alone the content.
Wait till you hear the title of this piece of research. Acceptance-based exposure therapy for public speaking anxiety.
Oh.
Now, I thought, hang on, public speaking anxiety, there's a phrase I recognise easily. There's a phrase that is relevant to a lot of people in all sorts of businesses, even if you only have a business which is a sole trader.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go and you ask to give a talk at a networking meeting. So it's or even if you're going to do a speech at a wedding or something, public speaking anxiety can be a real issue for some people. And sometimes quite a serious pathological. Yeah. Anyway, one method of therapy or treatment or coaching, moving away from the idea of it's a problem, is you give people exposure and habituation. It's a bit like anybody who's got a phobia of snakes. One way of treating it used to be...
is give them a snake.
You stick them in a room full of snakes.
Oh, lordy.
You habituate them, basically, gently. Over a period of time, you get them used to being around the thing that they're afraid of. So one way of doing this is get people gently into public speaking, and you expose them to it, and they habituate.
Okay.
Well, the idea is you lose the anxiety.
Okay, so it's not so much putting them in a room full of snakes, it's showing them a snake through a glass window and move on from there.
Move on from there to actually being chucked in a pit. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. The point, what you're trying to achieve is to reduce the anxiety.
Yes.
Okay, so they're habituated and all of a sudden, snakes, so what? Now, these guys have tested a slightly different kind of approach, which is called acceptance-based exposure.
Okay.
Which is where you encourage people to think differently about the bad feelings they're having. To think differently and accept the fact that they're uncomfortable doing public speaking.
Right.
On the basis that they're getting something worth it in the end, which is whatever, public acclaim or to get the message across to their people.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that, and I keep thinking of examples in my personal life where that doesn't work. And maybe it's just it's more about me and how deep rooted my my phobias and other challenges are. Fear of heights. Okay.
Right.
A 6-inch brick wall, I'll wobble on the top. When I'm up something, genuinely high, I am completely confident that there is a massive magnet on the ground which is pulling me over the edge. There is no doubt that's a reality. And obviously it's not, but I mean, that's how I feel. I have to stand with my back to the wall, holding on to something, just... Okay, so what did I do? What was the first one called? The
habituation. You get used to it, so you no longer have a fear of heights.
So I did a parachute jump.
Yeah.
And you know what?
That might be called implosion therapy.
I'm still scared of heights.
Yeah, well, they didn't work.
Two parachute jumps and I'm still scared of heights. So
then again, maybe we could go, if you wanted to do more parachute jumping for charity, we would get you to jump out of a plane with a parachute on, feel the fear, and do it anyway. Now, does that ring a bell?
Yes. I may surprise you, but I have read the book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
By Susan Jeffers.
Absolutely. It's interesting. And I disagree with much that she says, but hey, that's my... that doesn't surprise you at all, does it? But, I think, getting used to something. There's somebody I know who really doesn't like needles, injections, that kind of stuff. And he had something wrong with him, which meant he was in hospital and he was having about 8 injections a day for 5-6 weeks. And now he still doesn't like injections, but, it's got to be done, And
that's kind of acceptance. So what you're doing here is you're leading people to accept the difficult feelings. Now, that made me think of the old adage related to, technical term, performance arousal curve. You have to have a degree of arousal in order to perform.
Where are we going with this?
Well, this is a sporting thing. This is and or on stage, you have to have those butterflies, that anxiety that we feel. But if you're a consummate professional performer, you welcome them. You welcome the same feeling that you and I might get. because that's what's going to help you perform. And if you don't have them, you're likely
Yeah.
to be too laid back and it's going to be flat. If you have too many of them, you tip over into anxiety and you trip over yourself, your performance. So it's getting it right. And that made me think about this, acceptance therapy or acceptance coaching is, okay, feel the fear, notice how bad you feel about public speaking, but think about the outcomes of it and just do it.
Okay, so if as a business person listening to this, you've got some big thing coming up where you're going to feel out of your depth. You're probably not out of your depth. You're going to feel it, the butterflies, the fear, the what if it goes wrong, what if my PowerPoint doesn't work, etc. So what advice would you give to somebody right now who's, I've got this thing in 2 weeks. I think even though it's good for my business, it will bring in new customers, positives, and I want to do it.
Well, without going into the details of what you might do, depending on the client over those weeks, the point here is that you would find ways of allowing them to accept the difficulties they're having, the feelings they're having, and still do it in the cause of the greater good and the outcomes.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
Right. I want to play, before our guest actually gets